OMSA. And we are recording this to show it later this afternoon, or later tonight, really, at 7 o'clock. So our two speakers today, or people who are going to share, hoping this can be interactive too, are Rikilynn and Anne Zanger. We are all in Michigan. These are two colleagues of mine, and they've been working on this, on a number of things. We'll explain where we got our name for Mobility Monday. That mystery will be solved for the people who hadn't learned that early on. We have some really interesting things that go on in Michigan, and it's always fun to be a part of it. Even though I'm retired now, I'm not part of this, but I get to hear about it a lot because Anne and I spend some time together. And so I'm not going to get into much of anything else. I will hand it off to Anne.
Thanks, Susan. I'm Anne Zanger. I am an orientation and mobility specialist at the Genesee Intermediate School District in Flint, Michigan. I've been there for 15 years. My caseload is primarily school-based kiddos, school-aged kiddos. And I am the only exclusive O&M on an itinerant VI team of 4 people. So this has really given me an opportunity to just focus exclusively on mobility and not have to split my time.
And I am Rikilynn. I'm a comms and also a CVRT, and I work for Saginaw ISD. I'm kind of a mutt. My mom always asked me if I belong to the witness protection program because I move a lot. I've had an opportunity to work at Helen Keller National Center in New York. I did internships in Birmingham, Alabama, and also in Tucson, Arizona. I was in in Texas for working for 12 years. And then I've been here for the last almost 15 years now. Right now, my caseload is all kids, but I've also worked with all ages in the past. I am also the only O&M, and we lost our VI teachers. So we have 2 brand new teachers that are just starting the consortium this year. So that is the team that I am on currently.
So we thought we would spend a few minutes talking about Mobility Monday, which is a group that Rikilynn and I formed during the worst of the pandemic. So Mobility Monday was the precursor to our O&M PLC. So in March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, all Michigan schools, like across the country, all went to a virtual teaching platform. And like everyone else, we had no idea how to teach O&M virtually. And I certainly panicked. I think there was a lot of anxiety across the field in Michigan. So, we really weren't sure how to proceed. We were making things up as we went along. Like, it was absolute chaos in my world. I'm exclusively in mobility. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know how to start a Zoom meeting or send a Zoom link. So Rikylynn's county is one county north of where I am. So we spend a lot of time collaborating generally. So she's really been a huge source of support for me through really my entire teaching career, and certainly during the pandemic. So she called me and I think we were both pretty much panic stricken. And we just bounced ideas about what to do and how to proceed. And she bounced around an idea about getting a small group of folks together to talk about what we're doing and what we're being asked to do and how to do it well. And in the chaos of 2020, it kind of didn't get really any traction and it didn't move forward for a little bit. And after a few weeks of me spinning my wheels, I reached back out to Rikilynn and just said, what are your thoughts on this? Is this still something that you want to do? And is there a way we can make this to proceed? So we were really just looking for triage in a crisis and how to get through the last few weeks of school and give our kids and our families, good quality instruction in a really difficult situation. So we spent some time brainstorming about what the group would look like and what we wanted. And we really decided we wanted was a small group of solution-focused professionals. we were really all very aware of all of the barriers and challenges that were presented. We all felt very isolated, and we really wanted to connect with other O&Ms and just see what everyone else was doing, and make a better program. So we really focused on how to create quality instruction and maybe take advantage of an opportunity that was presented to us, share lesson ideas and support each other both with instructional content and how to manage the technology. So lots of different districts and counties were being asked to use different platforms, which was certainly out of my comfort zone. So initially we decided to meet every Monday on Zoom for several weeks, and it was fantastic for me anyway. It was fantastic. It checked all my boxes. I felt very connected to a community that was very supportive and very solution focused. We spent zero amount of time admiring the problem. We got colleagues together that had done fun and interesting ideas and were serving a diverse student population of all ages in the school system. And we found functional ways to support our families, which was really helpful. Eventually, we started to feel like we were getting our feet under us, and we're kind of being able to understand how to teach virtually, what was possible, what worked and what didn't work for our families. We started to move to every other week. And eventually the group kind of organically dissolved just because we felt like we really got better at teaching virtually. And most of us for the 2020-2021 school year went back to teaching in some format full-time in person. So that's kind of how we started the Mobility Monday group. And it just served our triage needs for a little while.
And then Susan called us and said, how about if we have this? How about if OMSA takes over? So that's how that happened. So this year, I was going to talk just a little bit about how this O&M PLC started. So I was feeling very, very isolated. One of the first things I said to Anne was, we need to address the island. Almost all of us are just one O&M in a district. There are a few districts in Michigan that are big enough to have a few O&Ms, but most of us are alone anyway. And then, as I said earlier, I lost my team that I did everything with. We were able to collaborate and do lots of cool programs for kids, and they were gone. And so I didn't have them. And then when COVID hit, we didn't even get to go to conferences anymore. Like, we had great conferences, but they were also Zoom. So we still weren't able to get together. And I was starting to feel really stale and starting to feel a little bit burnt out, really. And was kind of racking my brain for what can I do? I can't be the only one in this situation. We need to find a way to like address this need that O&Ms have. So again, I called Anne and started talking about what can we do. I'd really like to start a PLC. Let's talk about what we know about PLCs. And then I decided to actually make it one. I'm required to have 2 professional goals every year for my evaluation. So I decided that one of my goals was going to be to find out about a PLC, see if people were interested in participating in a PLC, and trying to figure out what that would look like. So Anne and I got together a couple of times to talk about what our needs were, what we thought the needs were of other comms in the area. And really it came down to, we needed to have, well, the first email we sent out, actually, we talked about what our goals would be, which was to build supportive professional relationships, to learn and share knowledge, to recognize and celebrate successes, to conduct case reviews. And then my other dream was to be able to have large group lessons, one every spring and one every fall. And initially, Anne and I we were trying to commit to a 3-year project. That's what we had said at the start. A couple of things that we decided together before we ever even sent the email was that it had to be in person, because we were all over the Zoom. We're kind of done with that. We think relationships build better when we're in person. We wanted it to be centrally located because we wanted every O&M in Michigan who wanted to participate to be able to get there. And again, solution oriented. This was not going to be a gripe session. We were very adamant about that. So we sent the email thinking, maybe, maybe not. And then we were overwhelmed with responses. I think I got like 28 responses within 24 hours that people really wanted this to happen and were interested in participating. So initially we had decided we were going to meet 5 times a year. So we've set up, so it's basically every other month during the school year. So January, March, May, and then again in September and November. And then we're trying to do the 2 large group lessons in off months. So April of this year and then October in the fall will be the group lessons. Can you put up the agenda for me, Susan? So one of the things we wanted to do, Anne and I, was to make it simple. A PLC this is not supposed to be the Anne and Rikilynn show. Everyone's supposed to be participating in the PLC. We're supposed to be learning from each other. So we have basically a standard agenda that we use every time. And this is what you're looking at now. So can you scroll down a little bit, Susan? So we always start with the welcome and introductions because there's new people every single time. We do a little icebreaker that is supposed to not have anything to do with work. It's just supposed to be a quick, 5, 10, 15 minute thing where we're breaking up into twos to learn something about each other so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. We do a follow-up of the last meeting. The deep dive is something that changes every single time. So for example, last time was pediatric belt canes, and we had people bring their belt canes and talk about their experiences and how to apply for one, the cost and all that stuff. Our next deep dive is going to be cane tips and tricks. And so everyone that comes is supposed to come with a cane tip or trick so that we actually go around the table and it's not Anne or I presenting anything. Next is making time for the ECC, which is something Anne and I really wanted to include. For us, most of the time, that means a daily living skill. And hopefully one that relates to orientation and mobility. So this next one, it's money. It's going to be some simple money folding. What are the best apps to determine what your bills are and what's the best way to use them so that you can be successful the first time. So simple and fast. We have a 30-minute break for lunch. People can either pack or go get their lunch. Several places within walking distance. Then we do challenges and questions for the group. So one of the big challenges that we did was transporting students. So a member of the PLC emailed me and said, I'm having people call me about this challenge, younger people that she was trying to mentor. Can you please find out what other people are doing in Michigan? So every single person that attended that time actually brought a form that they use in their district to be able to transport students. And we were able to, again, go around the table, talk about what did we do to have that happen? How does it work in our county? And it was amazing to me, the differences just within the state of Michigan about how people are getting that done. Next is news you can use. So you can see there, whatever's happening, we want to know, we want to be able to share with each other. And then can you scroll down a little bit further? We have discussion, whatever the topic is. Right now it's this air travel because we're in the thick of it. Right now, Anne's going to talk a little bit about the airport lesson in a minute, and then I'll talk about the flight. But we're going to have to discuss that briefly at the meeting. And then we also want to be thinking in advance, what's the group lesson going to be in the fall and who's going to be in charge of that group lesson in the fall. And then we always talk about wins, small, big, doesn't matter. We want to hear what's going well and what's going right because we do want to celebrate that and really try to focus on the positive. And then we wrap up. So see if there's anything else I missed. So one thing I did want to talk about was the first meeting, the deep dive. The first meeting was really figuring out what we needed and how things were going to work. So we spent that first meeting deep dive separating into groups. We had giant papers around the room, and we talked about what are the group norms going to be, what are the expectations for these meetings. We wanted to find out what did other people want to get out of the PLC? Did they have the same needs we had? Were there things that we needed to address that we weren't aware of? What did they want to see in terms of deep dives? What do we need to know more about? What can we bring and learn? And then also what did they need for group lessons? Because some of us are in rural areas. I have access to public transit. I don't, I need to go a ways to get to a train. I need to go a ways to get to an airport. I need, to get a roundabout. Things like that. We needed to know, what do you need to have addressed for these group lessons? Any questions for me before I pass it back over to Anne? Oh, I did quickly want to mention that, so Anne brings this PLC bag every time we have a meeting, because we want people to be comfortable. So she brings snacks, she brings coffee. We meet in the basement of a library and it is freezing in there. So she brings a little space heater so that we can survive it. And then she also brings like a charging station so people can charge their phones and devices while they're there. So we want the bar for participation to be very, very low. We don't want to add something else to people's plates and make it more complicated or difficult. We want to be solution focused.
Lindsay, did you have a question?
I did. Sorry, we're in the middle of announcements and dismissal right now. I was just going to ask to start the process. I love seeing your agenda. That's very similar to how we ran TVI cadres in Kentucky. But I was just wondering to compile your list and start by inviting all of the O&Ms in your state. Where did you go for that list, or how did you create that list?
We are very, very blessed in Michigan. We have a VI Michigan listserv. You have to live in Michigan and be involved with work related to VI-ness. And that's all, that's the only thing that's required to be part of that group. But I would say the majority of people in our field are part of that group, part of that listserv. So it's really easy for me to send that out and know that I'm reaching a majority of people. And we also told people with the first invitation, if you know anybody that's not on this listserv, feel free to share it. The only requirement to be in our group is that you be a comms. So. One of the, I'll just mention briefly, one of the things that my supervisor required me to do for my goal was to figure out how many comms there were in Michigan. And there were like 138 currently certified in Michigan. And I had access to that list. We all do through ACV REP. So you could find out who your O&Ms are in your state that way. I don't know. I mean, they don't provide contact information, but it would be a really good way to know who's out there and who you needed to reach.
Rikilynn, how many people on average have participated of those 138 people? How many regularly come to your meetings, or what's been your largest attendance?
Well, I guess we shouldn't say regularly because we just started this year. So we've had 2 meetings, and I want to say we have between 9 and 12 both times, which is a good, we like that number. I think if you get much less than, 7, you don't have a lot to talk about, but any more than 15, and I think it devolves into separate conversations and things. So we're really pleased with that. There were a few people that really pushed hard to be able to attend through Zoom, which we said no, we're not doing that. That we're just not doing that. We want it to be in person. And then I think 4 or 5 of those people that signed up initially are all leader dog people, and they're only allowed, they have to switch off who goes based on the needs of leader dog. So generally we expect a different person from leader dog to attend each meeting.
I did think our response was really interesting in that, like, we didn't just have school-based services staff members be interested. We also had WMU personnel be interested, and leader dog and our low incident outreach population be interested. So it was a nice cross section of people, for sure. So like Rikilynn said, we try to focus on 2 group lessons a year, and this year, this spring, we decided to do orientation in the airport. And so because the group belongs to the group and it's not run by Rikilynn or I, the group took suggestions about what we wanted the group lesson to look like this year. And so we all wrote down what we were looking for, and then we kind of looked at what was suggested and then what we felt like we could accomplish sometime between that January start date and that April group lesson. So we kind of chose airports mostly because we felt like we had potential resources connection at the Lansing airport. Although I work in Flint, I live in the Lansing area. So we felt like because that was like my home airport, that I might be able to get an in with the Lansing airport. It was, again, centrally located near where our PLC meets. It's, within 2 hours of most PLC members for their drive. And we kind of felt like it was a doable first group lesson. So the first thing our group did was just determine, like, what do we want out of this airport orientation? So what we kind of decided is we definitely wanted to have kids be able to get together and be able to meet other visually impaired students. So many of our kids, they're the only kiddo with a visual impairment in their school. They've had very few opportunities to interact with anyone else with a visual impairment. So we felt like that was a really huge draw for us. So we also wanted our students to become knowledgeable about the check-in process, learn about what is checking a bag and what is carry-on and the differences between them. The maximum amount of what you could have in a suitcase, 50 pounds. A lot of our kids don't know what that feels like. How much is 50 pounds? So I spent the Thursday before our group lesson packing black beans and quinoa into a suitcase on a scale in my living room, trying to figure out, what is 50 pounds? How close can I get it? So we got about 45 pounds of black beans in there. So we wanted our kiddos to know, like, where does luggage go once it's checked? And the concepts development around surrounding the luggage and the carry-on process. How big can a carry-on be? What can you put in a carry-on? What can you check? All those kinds of things. Those things that our kiddos, especially our kids who have never flown, probably don't know. And lots of kids don't know. And we wanted them to learn about the security process, TSA and how can you utilize TSA cares, the rights and responsibilities of a passenger, how to get assistance if you need it. What does the pre-boarding process look at? Like, how do you find your gate? When and how do you board? What the boarding process looks like? What's a jet bridge? How do you go from your gate to the plane? How do you locate your seat? Become oriented to the aircraft. What does flying sound like and feel like? How do you deplane and how do you find your bag? So we kind of developed, what is it we're looking for? And then I made contact with the Lansing region, the Capital Region Airport. It's Lansing Airport. Yes, it's just our small regional airport. It's got 7 gates. Because our request was pretty atypical at the Lansing airport, I did bounce between departments, trying to get someone's attention over there. I think I started with facilities and got bounced to PR, and PR bounced me back to facilities, and we did this game for a little bit. I did have a little bit of trouble getting anyone's attention. And I did have to be pretty direct. I had to say something like, we are going to be bringing 15 to 20 visually impaired students to your airport with their instructors. It's going to be very visible. And we really want this to be successful for our students, but we also want it to be successful for you. And I had to hand it to the Lansing airport. Like, once they understood our needs and I got their attention, they really took the ball and they ran with it. So they worked with multiple carriers and different departments in the airline to be able to meet as many of our needs as possible. So we got almost all of our needs met, except for being able to have them hold a plane so that we could get oriented to the plane and the jet bridge. So apparently that is an 8 to 12 month out request and involves 6 figures in fundraising. And clearly between January and April, we didn't have that kind of time or money. But they were able to do and meet almost every one of our needs. But we did spend several months exchanging emails between myself and the PR director at the Lansing airport. She figured out a way for us to be able to check a bag. She figured out a way for us to be able to get through security. They did a good job. We spent a lot of time collaborating on, if you guys will just do the airport orientation, our instructors will be able to fill in the gaps about how you do it as a visually impaired or blind person. So the learning curve was pretty strong, and it wasn't exactly the entry level lesson that I think we thought it was going to be going forward. Rikilynn and I both spent a lot of time just learning, how do you access an airport as a visually impaired or blind traveler? And we read articles, we reached out to other adults with visual impairments. We watched videos, we just learned. We called TSA cares, we called the airlines. We learned about what government agencies cover, which section of the airport, the rights and responsibilities of passengers, how you locate baggage claim, all those kinds of things. We had to learn all those things and figure out how you do every single step of that as a visually impaired person so that we could competently talk to our students about it. So when we actually engaged in the lesson ourselves, we gathered about 10 o'clock in the morning at the airport, so that would give all of our instructors time to go and pick their students up and then bring them to the Lansing airport at a reasonable hour. So the airline taught us about checking bags and the check-in process, how to get help if you need it. They let us check out the counter and the scale, and there's a device that you can put your bag in to see if you can carry it on, or if you have to check it, they let us check that out. They, let our students put 45 pounds of luggage on the scale and check it. TSA spent a lot of time talking to us about what's the security process look like? What do you do with your cane? You have to take your shoes off. Do you have to take things out of your bag? They spent some time talking to us about TSA cares and how you get assistance. And then they let us go through the security process. They let us go through the magnetron and the x-ray, and we all put our things in the bins that go through the x-ray or the CT scan at the airport. One of my students got flagged for a security check, and she had to get, like the wand and the pat down. One of Rikilynn students chose to do a pat down for the experience, so she knew what would happen, and they were able to accommodate all those requests for us. They had us use the escalator up to the terminal and to the gate. So we all got to experience that and instruct on that. So they did a really good job. They were able to talk to us about the boarding process, and let us walk up to the gate, talk to us about why it's called a gate when clearly it's a door. They even let us check out the baggage claim and talk to us about the carousel, and the baggage that we checked. They turned the carousel on and moved it around. Rikilynn put her phone on it playing music so our kids can kind of hear how quickly the carousel moves, which they were all very surprised about how quickly it moved, the shape that it was. It's not a typical shape, that it disappears in the back. And they all had an opportunity to take the luggage off the baggage carrier and put it back on, and had an opportunity to figure out, how do you manage luggage with a cane? Most of our students thought that you pushed rolling luggage, and you had to talk about, you have to actually pull it and how heavy it is to pull through an airport. Do you really want to take 45 or 50 pounds of things through an airport on the luggage? It was really, that was probably the most fun part, was watching the kids be able to put their luggage on and off and try that out and get really familiar with it. And then Rikilynn made arrangements for us to have lunch at a local pizza restaurant. And the students were required to sit at one end of the table and the adults at the other, and they had to engage in conversation and socialize with the other students there. And it was really fun to watch everyone be very nervous about that at the beginning, but then be very comfortable and make friends by the end of lunch. So it was really fun. If we had to do it again, I think that the things that I would change about the lesson is just allowing for more time and more time for our kids to get familiar and experience all those things in a less rushed manner. We were digging through toys at our house, trying to find a plane for our kids, just to be able to have the concept of what's the shape of a plane. I would have reached out to my assistant technology person to see if they can 3D print us a plane where, like, either it's a cross section of it or the top is cut off, so our kids can kind of see the broad outline of, understanding where you sit in the plane versus where the baggage goes versus where the pilot is and the wings and all those things that our kids don't really have a good concept of. And maybe a pre-orientation lesson that we send out to our instructors, having them be familiarized with a tactile map, some concept development about checking a bag and a carry-on, experience with what you want to pack in your luggage versus what you want to carry on. And those kinds of things. Like, those would kind of be some of the adjustments that I made that I think we probably will consider moving forward with group lessons.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we did have tactile maps of the airport. MDE LIO, which is our low incidence outreach, one of the O&Ms that participates in the PLC were kind enough to be able to create those and bring them along so that everybody had a copy, so we could talk about how that airport is laid out. Because when we go on our flight, we're going to want to compare that to the bigger airport. So this toy airplane is what I was able to find and bring along. So for the students that got there just a little bit early, we were able to go over just like what are the parts of an airplane, where do people go, what are the parts called, what's the cockpit, and what happens when the plane is slowing down and speeding up. But I agree, Anne, we really wanted something that they could tell, like a cross section, how things are set up, because we couldn't get into a plane. So I was super excited. I get left alone on Friday nights because my spouse is taking care of his parents. He's also a VI teacher, so he goes right from work on Friday to his parents' house. So I get myself in trouble on Friday nights. And one of the Friday night ideas was, why just show them? Why not take them on an actual flight so we can put into practice everything that we learned? So we decided that's what we were going to do. And we decided it needed to be on a Saturday towards the end of the year, because we didn't want to interfere with final exams or any of the activities that take place with our kiddos just before they get out of school for the summer. So on June 4th, which is a Saturday, we are all flying from Lansing, which is a very small regional airport with 8 gates, to Detroit, which is huge. It has multiple terminals and hundreds of gates with hundreds of different, not hundreds, several airlines that fly in and out of there. I was able to, I'm not sure what happens in other states, but in our state, we have mini grants, which are amazing. Their MDE-LIO has funds set aside for ideas like this, where you can do a training program, you can do things yourself, you can do things with kids, but as long as you're addressing a need of students, they generally support that. And the mini grants are up to $2,000. And I think I've probably applied for 5 of them since I moved here, and I've never been told no. So yay for mini grants. So they immediately, I mean, they never hesitated. They said, this is exactly what the grants are for. So I was able to write a grant to cover parking, which Anne ended up, for the first one, they actually gave us parking passes, so we didn't even have to pay for that. But so parking for the day of the flight, all the food for both of the lessons, and then for flights for myself and my kiddos. I found out as I was writing the grant that our ISD, we were not allowed to buy tickets for staff or students that didn't actually reside in our county. So I wrote the grant for every other piece of it that I could. And then I just sent the grant application to the other ISDs that wanted to participate, so they could basically copy and paste their reasoning and everything else so they could get approved right away. And so we've got 20 people going. We have 12 students that are flying that have tickets and 8 staff. So we're all going to be flying to Detroit. We're going to be comparing Detroit to Lansing. We're going to be trying out the moving walkways. We're going to be on the tram that takes you around the airport. We're going to be comparing like the size of the gates, the baggage claim. Each ISD is checking one bag so that we all have that experience, and we're going to have multiple ways of finding bags when they get there. In fact, I'm super excited because my air tag just arrived today. That's what I'm using for my bag. So that's what we're doing. Anyway, I'm super excited. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm happy to share grant information. I'm happy to do anything, because I'm really just excited for our kids to be able to have this experience. My students, I have one student who's flown. I think a couple of other instructors had one student that's flown, but for the most part, most of our students that are participating in this have never been on a plane before. And I have kids that are really excited to go, and I have kids that are kind of scared about it. So I am excited. I have to say that this PLC and this group lesson probably are the biggest joy of my school year this year, being involved in all of this. It's got me really excited about being an orientation mobility specialist again. So, questions? I see no questions. Anything else you wanted to add, Anne?
No, I think you did a great job covering it. I think the PLC for me really has energized me again. It's been a very busy year professionally. And over the last couple of years has been pretty busy. So being able to connect with other O&Ms and get fresh ideas and reduce isolation has been a wonderful thing for me. I really feel great about teaching again in a way that I kind of felt a little stagnant.
It looks like Kevin has his hand up.
I do. Hi, thank you for your presentation. I missed about the first 10 minutes, so I may ask a question that you covered, but hopefully maybe you can cover it again where we can have a deeper understanding. I don't know. But for the PLCs, are you just meeting in one city, like in general, or do you move in different regions around the state? So that's one question. The other question is, when I looked at your agenda, it's all day. So how is it, almost maybe half a day or something, but so how hard is it to get people to participate in something that's going to take them away from work for pretty much a whole day?
Well, I think one of the first things Anne and I decided was that it had to be centrally located because we really wanted people to participate. Anne and I are right next to each other, so it would have been super handy to just have it in Saginaw or Flint or something. But we really wanted other minds. Anne and I can get together whenever we need to get together, but we wanted other people, and especially we've got a bunch of new-ish O&Ms in Michigan, and we really wanted to reach out to them and to everybody to be able to participate. And then I chose 10 to 2 because it gave people a chance to get there and get back to their districts within what would be a normal day. And I'm not sure how much trouble. I feel like people that really want to come have been able to come. I never have any trouble with my boss saying there's this meeting I want to go to, or there's this thing I want to do, and it's going to advance me professionally and help me be a better teacher for kids. And maybe I'm extra blessed in that area. I'm not sure. I know Anne doesn't have any trouble doing that either. And for the most part, I don't think anyone sitting around the table has had to fight their bosses about it. Really, it's how much of a crush is your caseload? I feel like if anything's preventing people from coming, the few comments I've had, it's that they're just overwhelmed with students and can't take the time away.
Okay, we have a couple of people with hands up. I think Kevin McCormick, I saw. I'm sorry, I had to take a quick phone
Yeah,
call.
that was his question. We were just answering.
Okay, Kevin, take your hand out. All right, Beth Brabs.
Hi, I don't really have a question. I just wanted to piggyback on what Rikilynn was saying to Kevin and let you know, I think I mentioned this to Susan and maybe to Rikilynn and Anne too, that I would like to, as a person that works at LIO, do as much as I can to support this group and perhaps try to grow it in northern regions of our state, so that if there are teachers who are wanting to participate, but they just can't take the time to drive to Lansing area to do it, maybe they'd be able to do it in a region that's a little bit closer to them. Michigan is an awfully big state. So, and I went to the PLC, I've only been once, but I also went to the airport trip. It was really great to see the kids on this lesson. And it was nice to be at that PLC, seeing people sharing and supporting one another, because it really is an isolating thing to be an O&M in most places. So thank you.
Two things I wanted to mention about that. So my student, one of the students I brought along, has really been struggling at school, getting bullied at school. And he's got SOD, so he's smaller than the other kids. He looks younger. He tends to get treated like a baby, even though he's in 6th grade, and on it went. So to see him at the pizza place, he actually got an opportunity to teach some other kids some stuff. And to have him tell me on the way home that he made a new friend today, I was like, totally worth it. And then one of the other instructors emailed me that night, and one of her students who'd been losing vision and was very, not willing to talk about it, not ready to talk about it, shared that with the other student that went along. Like, that's the first time that they ever talked about that. So, and I got other comments from other instructors that were along that same vein. So Ann and I both, like, Friday night, we were like totally exhausted and totally worth it. Because that is, I mean, that's my dream for these group lessons, that kids have a safe place where they can have fun and learn together and not always be the only one. So was, totally worth all the time and energy that was put into it. Is that it for hands up?
I have a question. This is Eileen Zipperman. Have you given consideration, Rikilynn and Anne, to sort of writing up that lesson plan, because those objectives were very specific, and there's no reason why other mobility instructors, even within the state of Michigan, Traverse City has a small airport that would at least take them up north, that they could duplicate that. And with the success that you had with the airport personnel in Lansing, that sort of can help to support even other airports, allowing students to have that type of experience within their airport.
Absolutely. Like, I have it written up, and just for my own purposes, when I went to teach, I had it written up, and I wanted to make sure that, we were covering our objectives and all those kinds of things. And then along the way during the lesson, I've made notes about things, like, oh, I didn't think about this, or I just learned a thing, like what happens with your dog guide, like that. It was some really interesting things that I learned along the way, that I've handwritten down into my notes along the way. And one of my goals for this week is to be able to clean those up and then send them out to PLC members. But really, there's no secret sauce. Like, I'm happy to share this lesson plan. It's not special in any way, but as an instructor who's got a very full caseload, there's just no need to reinvent the wheel, and I would be happy to share.
I wonder if having it in the new review
Yes.
would be a good, because it doesn't have to be research based. It's just, it's for practice, what's in practice. So like, that would be, I mean, you're already almost there. Do you like
Yeah.
how I give you more work, Anne?
I noticed that, but what I've also noticed is that you have great ideas, and I just high five all of them.
So I did want to say that this, I did something similar 10 years ago, and it was way, way harder now. And one of the first people I reached out to for this was Pat Pound, she is a blind adult who lives in Austin, Texas. And I happened to see her present at a SWOMA conference a few years ago, and it was tips and tricks for travel. And so she's the first person I called, and the first thing she said was, both airports and airlines are at their breaking point. I would recommend you wait a year, which I would also recommend that. Now that I see, I mean, it shouldn't have been that hard for Anne, but it's absolutely true. Every place is short staffed. The airlines are trying to get up and running again. This was a very difficult time, and it is a difficult time for them right now, but we were just already determined and pushed forward through it. But I imagine it would be a lot easier in the future, like give it a year, give the airline a year to kind of get their feet back under them. And I think it would go a lot more smoothly.
It is very true. Every time I reached out to the head of PR at the Lansing airport, she's like, the person at this airline is brand new, or this person just left, or, we haven't had someone in this role for a while. So I think it was a big ask for us at the Lansing airport, and they really did do an excellent job.
But in the perspective of things, a year of planning isn't a really long time. So as far as for the mobility instructor to understand all the ramifications and do the studying that you all did prior to even starting this, can start now. They can start with that now.
Right.
I have one other strategy question. What was the strategy you used for the students to identify their luggage? on the, in the baggage claim?
Well, we only had one bag. So we just put Rikylynn's phone on it. But we did talk about different ways and different strategies for identifying your bag in, the mix of everyone else's bag. So I think Rikilynn, did you get an air tag or a tile?
I got an air tag. We did talk about tiles. MDELIO has donated some, I think they're the neon orange, like the things that go over your handle. So for our low vision kids to help them pick that out of a lineup. And then my students, I've talked about IRA, but I'm not planning to use it in Detroit.
Yep, I talked about several strategies with my students. Both of the students that I brought are low vision students. So we talked about high contrast, or one of my students is way jazzed to be able to decorate my luggage that we're going to check. So we'll probably implement a couple of different strategies and try them and see what works best for each kiddo.
And so for those of you, if you don't know about air tags, they're amazing. You put the app there for Apple phones. You put the app on your phone and it will actually give you verbal directions that your bag is 12 feet to the right, or, at 12 o'clock in front of you, another 50 feet. It will actually guide you directly to your bag, which is nice. And if your bag got lost or somewhere else, any iPhone that walks past that bag will ping and let you know where it is. And it doesn't affect the privacy of that person's phone. It doesn't give you any information about them, but it does give you information about where your bag is. If it's out of,
Rikilynn, how much does that cost? That I'm reading chats. How much does it cost?
I want to say it was between $20 and $30. The case I bought cost more than the tag because I wanted a sturdy case for mine and a high contrast case. So I want to say the tag and the case itself was $60 total.
Yeah, I think they're about $30 each. You can get a 4-pack for like $100.
And we had another request of whether your contact information could be put into chat so that people know how to contact you.
I will add mine now. That's me, layer R at SISD.cc.
I'm A Zanger at Genesee, GENESEEISD.org.
So one of the big reasons we agreed to do, I can't speak for Anne, one of the big reasons I agreed to do this is because I want other people to know it's not hard to do a PLC. We have our standard agenda. Like this group lesson took a lot of time and energy. Getting it up and running was a commitment. But the whole point of having the same agenda every time with just a few tweaks is that it's not going to be a lot of work, but we're going to get a lot out of it. And I know some states, like in Texas, they have their region centers and they have opportunities for O&Ms to get together. They don't get to have the group lessons like we do, but at least the O&Ms get together. For us, we wait for conferences. So I think there's a lot of states like us where there isn't a regularly scheduled opportunity to do that. And I would love to see this happening in more states because I feel like most of us feel like we do. We can use the support, we can use the ideas, we can use the energy.
Well, and in Michigan at different times, we have had that either through LIO or years and years ago when we had School for the Blind. The O&M, I've been teaching O&M in Michigan since 1979, and there have been periods of time when we were able to meet casually, not at conferences, and either have a work project or just the swap meets that still happen in Michigan. I don't think they've been happening the last few years, but just that casual time, and I think just O&M, is really critical to have for us to have our time together with our colleagues.
When I first got here, there was a task force and I was really excited to be a part of it. At the time, I think the main project was developing a goal bank, but also trying to align goals with state standards. And then when that sort of wrapped up, the task force stopped meeting and I just kept poking people. When's the task force going to start up again? We need the task force. What do we need to do to get the task force? And it wasn't gonna, I just feel like it wasn't gonna happen, so I'll do it myself. I can do it. I have a
Beth and I emailed a bit about that, and she just put into chat that it's something that she wants to work on in her position at LIO.
Yep. That's exciting. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say,
Thank you. You guys have inspired me.
the PLC meetings weren't difficult to launch at all. I think the group lesson was a little bit more difficult, but the PLC itself was not difficult to get up and running. And I will say, like, not only do I find it professionally beneficial, it's super fun. Like, it's super fun to be with your colleagues. It's super fun to do an ILS lesson. It is a really nice atmosphere. It's a really nice time. It's not that much work at all.
Okay. Well, we're not quite at 4, but we have no requirement to go till 4. And I know Anne has a commitment with one of her kids. Anything else before? Thank you so much, both of you. We've had several thank yous in chat. I think this was something that really, was something we needed to see. And I know as I've talked with Anne, it just hit me a couple of weeks ago that I needed to ask. Our past several Mobility Mondays have had speakers, and I think that it's been very beneficial. Sometimes it can be hard to fill an hour with just chatting. So thank you again.
Well, and I know for the people that wanted to participate but were too far away, Anne was pointing them towards Mobility Mondays. There's this other option. There is an online option, and it's Mobility Monday. Yep.
And I think that now that we're opening up a little bit, North Carolina last weekend had an O&M summit at their school for the blind. And so I think we as orientation mobility instructors are getting to be a little freer to travel ourselves and to get together. So that's nice to see that that's happening with more face-to-face meetings. So thank you both.
Thanks for inviting us. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody can sign off. I will end the meeting in just a minute. Thanks for coming.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, actually, Eileen's going to have to end the meeting. She's the host.
Okay, I'm ending it for all.